If you were on the beach and you saw a woman with a really nice figure and in skimpy underwear, would you look twice?
Would I look twice?
This is a man question.
Most of the time, as Mary knows, I don't look at all because I don't even notice her. It's hard to sort of explain to a person who notices it all the time. The main reason why I don't notice her is because I feel sexually connected with Mary. I feel like her body is the thing that I am sexually connected to. Her soul, and in reality it's her soul that I'm connected to. That's the feeling that I have. And so the only time that I would ever see what's going on with someone else is if there was a projection coming from them towards me that I felt some level of discomfort of, or some kind of thing I wanted to address with it. So if that woman was sexually projecting at me, to look at her, then I might look at her and I might even be tempted to go up to her and say, why did you do that? Do you know what I mean? Like, it might go up to, why did you want me to look at you?
Most men would just say, oh, look, I'm only human, you know, she's got a good figure.
You mean
I'm allowed to look.
You mean you're only sinful? That's okay. Not only human. Remember I said that humans have the capacity to be perfect.
How is that sinful? Are you violating that person by looking at them?
As I said in the first century, any man who looks at a woman to have lust and has lust for her in his heart, he has committed adultery in his heart.
What if they say it's not lust, they're just admiring...
No, he has shared sexual energy with her. And that is an exchange of sexual feelings. And that is promiscuity. And there's a reason for it. So I'm not judging it, I'm just saying that's what it is.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is to the man is you need to look at why you have that. And why you have it will be based around all sorts of emotions. Some of it might be sadness with your current partner, that she is not sexually, involved with you, that she doesn't really want you. Some of it might be sadness about something that's happened in history. Something might be in that woman emotionally that attracts you that is not in your partner. Does that make sense? And if you're honest about all the things, both with yourself and your partner, you'll be able to work through a great variety of emotional reasons as to why you felt drawn into looking. Does that make sense? So if I feel drawn into looking at somebody, and there's occasions where that may happen, if we're walking along a beach and there's a sexual projection coming from somebody, it doesn't matter how they're dressed, I will look at them and go, what's going on with you here? Like, that's the feeling. And I say to Mary, this woman's projecting at me, and, I don't, can you feel what's going on with her? And we discuss it. We discuss what's going on, like, as to why it was so intense that it caused me to notice, because most of the time I will not even notice. And Mary often comments that I wouldn't notice a naked woman walking along the road. And I feel eventually on the planet is that once you are fully connected with your soulmate and you're in a condition of love, you wouldn't even notice. You notice she's not dressed, but you wouldn't sort of have a feeling of lust or desire for that inside of yourself as a result. Does that make sense? And it would actually be safe for women to walk around naked, and safe for men to walk around naked under those circumstances. Yeah. So, and that's, I feel, how God intended it in the end.
Well, I don't think in those Brazilian villages where everyone walks around naked, I don't think they'd sell too many Playboys there, would they? Exactly.
And the reality is there's very few sexual projections as well in those environments generally, because they are very committed to the relationship of the soul individually with the people. So if they are in a relationship with a woman, it's because they desire her, not they don't desire every other woman and they're just taking this woman because she's a fallback position.
Do you think because this is something, and sexual things are something that church people have felt guilty about for centuries, do you think this suppression has amplified?
It has amplified it terribly. It has caused a huge amount of problems. The sexual suppression of men and women have caused innumerable problems on this planet. And the sexual suppression of children by parents causes innumerable problems with their sexuality later in their life, and causes them to be attracted to all sorts of sexual situations and positions, often that are very unhealthy for their own soul, as a direct result of the suppression that has occurred in their history. And one of the big emotional difficulties of resolving sexual problems on the planet is the emotional difficulties relating to shame with regard to sexual issues. There is huge amounts of shame, and this shame causes two responses. It causes rage and therefore rebellion, or it causes suppression and therefore like suppression of sexual desire. And I feel society is exhibiting and expressing both of those extremes. You see society expressing sexual liberation and rebellion, and you also see society at the same time many times expressing sexual suppression. Like if you look at the general culture in the USA, for example, you see this going on amazingly so. Like on one hand, you see the sexual liberation, the rage, the anger, you know, the having sex under all sorts of circumstances going. But then you get the Christian majority, which defines what happens in the USA politically, and 70% of the population is generally that. And so you get all of this sexual suppression, condemnation. You know, if a politician has an affair, man, it's like he's slaughtered. It's not like nobody understands the reason why. Nobody even looks at the reason why. Nobody even examines whether it's affecting him as a politician in terms of his decision-making processes or any of those other questions that are viable questions to ask, because there's so much judgment and rage about the suppression of the sexuality. Now, I'm not suggesting that a person who's adulterous hasn't got anything to work through, because they do. But I am suggesting that our judgment of it causes far more problems than it resolves.
And probably the initial thing that caused that was what we started talking about, where somebody's intellect decided this is an appropriate code of conduct. Women need to wear skirts down to here.
Yep.
And the intention was good, the outcome was very negative.
Yes, and often the intention covers over the emotional injury. So for example, historically, many priests have condemned women for any display of any part of their body, let alone their breasts or their vagina or the bottom or whatever. And the reason why is because many men are terrified of a woman's power over them sexually, right? And as a result of this terror that many men possess, many men then want to control how a woman expresses herself sexually, because they're afraid of their own response to the woman. And so what they then do is make a whole series of rules for the woman as to what is modest behaviour, never addressing, of course, the underlying fear they have about why they feel drawn to the woman who has immodest behaviour. And so they have all this cloak of modesty placed over the woman in order to prevent a whole heap of dark emotions that exist in themselves. And this is a very unproductive way to get closer to God. You can't get closer to God by covering over the things you feel. God knows what you feel, and it's going to be impossible for you to cover them over. And this is why eventually many of these ministers and priests have become pedophiles and other examples of sexual deviancy, because they've covered over these underlying feelings for such a long period of time. They don't know how to express them, and they don't know how to address them or deal with them, and eventually they come out in some kind of deviant behaviour.